I am a great reporter. I have landed several important interviews, but the greatest of all was with the devil. Yes, I interviewed him with the devil and discovered his tricks to take over our souls. I met souls who fell into his traps, souls who, like you, thought they were safe. The devil is cunning, his weapons are cowardly and very subtle, and if you don't know them, you won't be able to escape. What he told me will leave you in shock, and you will never see your life decisions. Hello, my name is Lucas, and once upon a time, I was a reporter driven by a passion, insatiable for religious and supernatural topics. I interviewed cult leaders, I entered abandoned temples and spent nights searching for stories that could touch people's souls. What at first was a quest for understanding morphed into an obsession. I wanted to be the best, the most respected, and to a certain extent, I succeeded. But like many stories, mine didn't begin that way. On that fateful day, I was surrounded by piles of notes and recording equipment in my small apartment, which felt more like a makeshift newsroom than a home. The smell of steaming coffee wafted through the air, mixed with the anxiety throbbing inside me. My next big scoop was about to happen. I had a source who promised to lead me to a dark cult on the outskirts of the city, something that could transform my career. As I prepared to manipulate the truth in pursuit of a more compelling narrative, I was so focused on being the headline grabber that I lost sight of the true purpose of my investigations. I was completely absorbed in the glow of the fame this story could bring me, but every story has a cost, and at that moment, I was just beginning to pay. That night, intoxicated by the possibility of a big scoop, I found myself in the city surrounded by strangers watching the shadows of faces around me, and for a moment I almost glorified myths I myself had helped to create. I was part of the show. But amidst all the excitement, a small inner voice began to grow, demanding that I look at what I was really doing. Where is the truth? I thought, but it chases away doubt. Time passed, and as I headed to the airport for my next big scoop, an interview with a religious renegade who promised to reveal dark secrets, rush consumed me. I just wanted to get there and be the first to tell the story. I looked around and saw a few anxious faces, but the excitement of recording new experiences drowned out any vestiges of fear. When we took off, it seemed that the entire universe was conspiring in my favor. The clouds were like white sheets, and I was about to plunge into a high that few would experience. But as in every great story, the unexpected lurked. Suddenly formed, a brutal storm raging around us, as if the sky itself were enraged. The clouds grew thick and dark, and the plane began to shake. The adrenaline that had once fueled me now turned into pure terror. The fear was palpable, spiraling out of my control with every turbulence. The pilot tried to remain calm, but I knew we were in trouble. What could have been an exciting ride was now turning into a fight for survival. With a violent jolt, the plane began to plummet. In that moment, life seemed to speed up. I remembered everything I had left behind, all the stories I had manipulated, the principles I myself had ignored, and it was in that split second that I realized there was no way back. I was about to pay the price for all the choices I had made, and the question echoing in my mind was, what would come next? The impact was brutal, an explosion of light, pain, and darkness. I didn't know that this would be the beginning of a journey that would take me beyond anything I could imagine, to a place where the echoes of my mistakes would become incredibly clear. I was about to discover that hell wasn't just a religious concept but a terrifying reality. The pain was surmountable. When I opened my eyes, the first thing I noticed was the deep darkness around me. It was as if I were in an endless chamber, a suffocating loneliness surrounded by an oppressive silence. I tried to move, but my body didn't respond. I felt trapped in an invisible prison, as if I were floating between life and death. That's when I heard a distant whisper. It wasn't just any whisper, but a collective language, an echo of voices intertwined in despair. A feeling of anguish settled over me. Fear began to take hold, but at the same time, a restless curiosity grew within me. I knew there was something more behind that darkness, something beyond my understanding. Suddenly, a faint glow began to form in front of me. It wasn't a light like the sun, but a cold, almost spectral luminescence. As I drew closer, I realized I was in a horrible and surreal place. What I saw wasn't a landscape, but a vast abyss filled with lost and tormented souls. In that moment, I realized I was in hell. The scene around me was desolate. The flames burned in different shades, but they produced no heat. Instead, they emanated a distressing cold that penetrated my essence. The smell of sulfur and suffering was unbearable. Looking closer, I saw the faces of people I knew, distorted reflections of their existences. Each carried a burden of pain, a frustrating echo of who they had been before their choices condemned them there. I walked slowly among the wandering souls, each trapped in their own nightmares. I felt anguish in the air, like a dense, suffocating fog. The first person I encountered was a familiar-looking woman, with a blank stare enveloping her face. She wept her tears, mingling with fire and pain, as if hell itself had taken hold of her emotions. "You can't be here," she said, her voice cracking and trembling. "What do you want from me?" Her words carried a palpable desperation, and something inside me made me want to understand her more deeply. In those moments, I realized that every soul had a story, a burden they carried. What she didn't know was that I was a reporter, someone seeking to understand the truths behind human experiences. With that in mind, I was taken by an uncontrollable impulse. "Can I interview you?" I asked, the need to capture her pain and lessons emerging like a beacon in the darkness. "Please, tell me your story. What brought you here?" She faltered, her gaze fixed on me for a moment, as if pondering the question with a mixture of hope and skepticism. "I was a digital influencer," she began to relate, her voice now heavy with reminiscences. "I promised a perfect life, surrender of what didn't exist. My followers trusted me. I was the voice of hope, but deep down, it was all a farce. I was consumed by the desire to be loved, to be famous." "And what did that cost you?" I inquired, already feeling the gravity of her response permeating the air around us. "It cost me everything," she continued, the agony transparent in her eyes. "The hours of work, the lies I told, and most painfully, the people I disappointed. I was so focused on building an image that I ignored the consequences of my actions. Now I am a prisoner of my own ego and broken promises." I felt the weight of her words. It was a testament to what many in search of validation could become. I wanted to know more. "How do you feel now, surrounded by these flames and people who don't know your suffering?" I asked, searching for the text of her pain. "It's unbearable," she replied, her voice breaking. "There's no room for smiles here. Every day that passes, I remember the lives I could have changed if I had been true to myself and to others. Now I am just one shadow of what should be, and that weight, that conscience is the cruelest torture of all." Before I could formulate another question without warning, she began to fade into the shadows. The feeling of helplessness enveloped me. "Wait," I screamed, but there was no answer, only the echo of what once was left a paralyzing void. Feeling like I needed to understand more about those souls, wondering, I advanced through the darkness while absorbing the deep pain of the woman who had disappeared. In the shadows, a new scent of suffering began to form in the thick air of hell. It wasn't long before a robust man appeared before me, a heap of despair and regret. His gaze carried the weight of a lifetime, and he recognized me almost instantly, as if he were waiting for me. "You know me, right?" he said with bitter irony. "I was a preacher, a religious leader. I always said I had an answer, but I lived in a pride that destroyed my faith and what it stood for. Now here I am, trapped in my own sin." I felt the sincerity in his voice but also the shame emanating from him. This place, this hell, made him more visible. In his vulnerability, there was an urgency in me, a need to understand his story, like that of the woman who had gone before him. "Can I interview you?" I asked, determined to grasp his lessons and emotions. "Tell me what brought you here. What was your fateful choice?" He took a deep breath, and the weight of his memories seemed almost unbearable. "I was always the link between the sacred and the profane. For years, I told people how they should live, how they should behave, but behind the curtains of my affected life, there was an insidious arrogance." "Arrogance," I repeated, trying to decipher the reason for his downfall. "Yes," he continued, his voice breaking, I became so obsessed with being respected and admired that I lost sight of my own faith. I didn't follow what he preached. I saw myself as a beacon, but in reality, I was in a storm of pride that I couldn't recognize. Listening to his words, I realized that every revelation from him was an echo of warnings I myself had ignored. And what would you say to those yet to come? What would you like them to know? Humility, he replied, and the weight of his word resonated around me. If this place teaches me anything, it's that recognizing one's own fragility is the first step toward their redemption. I never had. I thought I was strong, a pillar of faith, but deep down, I was just a blind man leading others in the dark. And now I asked, intrigued by the intensity of his reflection, how do you feel here? Trapped in the flames, it's unbearable, his voice exclaimed, increasing in intensity. Here are the consequences of every word I said, from every person I let down. The pain of knowing I could have made a difference is the torture that consumes me. Instead of light, I let darkness enter my heart, and now I am an echo of broken promises. I could see in his eyes the struggle he was waging with himself. The hypocrisy he had created had become a shield. In his eternal prison, I felt deeply touched by his struggle. How do you perceive your life now? On earth, what would you do differently? If you had a new chance? I asked, hoping he would find hope, even in this dark place. He hesitated for a moment, as if the words were thorns on his tongue. I believe one day we will all face the truth, and the truth is that arrogance and pride are poisons that consume us. If I could go back, I would tell everyone that true strength lies in vulnerability and the ability to humble oneself. It is necessary to open one's heart and listen, instead of just talking. Hearing him speak, a wave of relief mixed with pain began to wash over me. Here was a man who, despite his fall, had learned the hardest lesson, even if it was too late. And the people listening to you, I asked, will also have that chance to redeem themselves. I hope so, his voice answered. Now, just a whisper in the flames, they still have time. What I wish for is that they are not defined by the words we say, but by the actions we take, we make and the humility we cultivate. Every choice counts, and I put aside the importance of that for a long time. At that moment, a deeper understanding settled within me. The echo of his pain reflected choices many might avoid, including myself. But before I could ask more, the man began to fade into the shadows, leaving behind an impression of fragility and wisdom. Wait, I cried out, feeling I still had so much to ask, but he was already fading like a flame that goes out in the wind. In his place, the flames began to burn brighter, enveloping me in a new layer of pain and reflection. The lesson he left resonated within me, and I realized there was still much to understand. Maintain humility, acknowledge one's own fragility. Those were the paths I could choose, even before I found the remaining souls, and so I continued my journey through the flames of hell, eager to know what other story might further illuminate my understanding. In this bleak world, while the image of the preacher proud was fading slowly, a new despair began to materialize in the shadows that danced around me amidst the chaos of the flames and the wailing. Something caught my attention. A young woman appeared in front of me, visibly destroyed. She had an expression of deep pain, and her body was trembling as if trapped in an invisible chain that absorbed her essence. I came here in search of pleasure, she said, her eyes wide open and filled with tears. I was greedy, thinking I needed to satisfy myself at every moment. I didn't realize that every desire I attended to distanced me from life until I was completely lost. Now I am a mere specter of who I really was. The sound of her voice was so painful that I felt a genuine empathy taking hold of me. There was a soul who had traded life for a relentless pursuit of fleeting pleasure. Can I interview you? I asked, feeling the need to understand her suffering and its lessons growing within me. Tell me what brought you to this place. She hesitated, as if the pain of reliving her memories was almost unbearable. I thought happiness lay in the things I consumed. With a trembling voice, from food to validation on social media, I was constantly searching for something to fill the void inside me. With each new desire, satisfied with each feast, I believed I could achieve satisfaction, but each time the void grew larger. How did that bring you to this place? I asked, curious about the levels of perdition that this search could generate. What I didn't understand was that true happiness came not from what I consumed but from how I lived. His pain responded, evident in every word. My gluttony isolated me. I began to despise everything and everyone around me. People drifted away, and I sank into a decadent life full of excesses. Did you find joy at some point in that search for pleasure? I inquired, knowing the answer probably wouldn't be what I expected. Happiness cannot exist without consciousness. He said the words, echoing like a distant bell tower in the vastness of torment. I exchanged true contentment for satisfaction. Ephemeral. There is no room for joy here, only the memory of what could have been. Listening to her outpouring, it seemed like happiness and love had slipped through her fingers, leaving only the ashes of an unquenchable desire. What would you say to someone struggling with the same demons you faced? I asked, hoping her words could serve as a warning. I would say that true freedom comes from self-control and restraint, she replied, the expression on her face changing slightly, as if reflecting on painful knowledge. We should never let the pursuit of pleasure consume us. Pleasure can be a trap. I learned this the hard way. If you could go back and change one thing, what would it be? My curiosity led me to ask, wishing to understand the depth of her regret. Had I learned to value what truly matters? The people around me, my health, the joy of simple moments? She replied, the sadness in her voice transforming into a faint sigh. I would have cultivated relationships instead of consuming them in pursuit of approval and temporary pleasure. In that moment, I realized that every soul that I found was a reflection of the decisions I myself could make, a warning of what my life could be. Then a new question arose in my mind. Do you regret the life you led? Without a doubt, said the pain rooted in her answer. It's not worth living like this. Momentary satisfaction can't fill the void in the soul. To look at who I am now, here trapped in the flames, is the portrait of the person I never wanted to be. As she spoke, I watched the flames around us that seemed to dance in unison with her despair. I wanted her to feel a little peace even in this dark place. If you were in a safe place now and could leave a message for the world, what would you say? She looked into my eyes and with an urgent tone declared, never underestimate the value of self-control and self-love. Don't let yourself be consumed by desires that only mask the pain. Learn to listen to your soul and embrace the simple moments that life offers you. With that, a shower of tears sprang from her eyes, reflecting the pain of her journey and the strength of her message. But like everything ephemeral in hell, the young woman's image began to dissipate, disappearing into the flames that surrounded her, taking with it the wisdom she carried. I cried out, recognizing that there was still more I wanted to ask, but like the souls before her, she was already lost in the suffocating mists that enveloped this place, leaving only the echo of her words. As the shadows dissipated, a haunting silence took hold of hell. The once vibrant flames seemed to bow in somber respect toward the approaching presence, and then, like an echo, a towering figure emerged before me, entangled in spectral darkness. You have come here, curious and bold, the entity said, its voice echoing as if each word opened a portal to its essence. It was a demon, and despite its terrifying nature, there was an aura of captivating persuasion about its being. May I interview you? I asked, filled with unease and fascination. I want to understand more about what happens here, about how souls they lose. The interview, you say? The demon laughed, a sound that reverberated through the flames. Continue. I'm willing to answer, but remember, the games I play are much more subtle than you imagine. Let's begin then. I began, searching for the courage that disguised me as fear. How do you act in people's lives? What are your most effective traps? What you must understand. The demon began, his eyes glowing like burning coals. It's that fear and doubt are my best allies. I whisper uncertainties into people's minds, transforming small doubts into impenetrable barriers. It's not brute force that I use, it's subtle weaknesses. By sowing doubt about their beliefs, I create fissures in their souls. So you want people to disbelieve in you, to cast away their responsibility for your existence? I asked, trying to understand the plan. Wide in which he inserted himself exactly, he replied, the satisfaction in his voice almost palpable. When people doubt me, I can act freely. They become complacent, and that complacency is the door that opens to sin. The more they believe I'm just a fable or a myth, the easier they are to capture. And what are your methods? How do you infiltrate people's lives without them realizing it? I investigated, curious about their tactics. My methods are tricks of seduction, he said, tracing arabesques in the air, disguising myself as worldly desires, wealth, power, approval. He observes how they desire to be desired, as if every yes they utter in search of acceptance leads them down a path of loss. The thirst for consumerist pleasure blinds them to what truly matters, but you are not afraid of the consequences of your actions. There are no souls that manage to resist and defeat you, I questioned, challenging his stance. But that is exactly what fascinates me, he replied, his eyes shining with an evil light. Even when a soul manages to resist, the doubt I sowed sows insecurity. The real battle is in making them question themselves. When souls believe their choices have no consequences, the chains are already forming, and I don't even need to work harder. They trap themselves. As his words echoed, I noticed how relevant his vision was, especially in a world full of distractions and superficialities. And what do you hope to accomplish with this? Why capture souls? The purpose is simple: power. Every soul that gives in to despair and temptation becomes a part of me. I feed on human despair, and the more souls I can gather, the stronger I become, he declared, the intensity in his voice growing. For hell, the greater the despair, the better. Each cry, every lament is a feast for me. And what can souls do to escape your clutches? I asked, a spark of hope emerging in the midst of my apprehension. Recognize the truth: life is full of choices, and each choice has a weight. The awareness of your own fragility is the key. Humility, as already you've heard of other souls here, it's a powerful shield. My traps, only when they become aware that they are not alone, that their struggles are part of the human journey, can they begin to free themselves, he replied in a tone that mixed disdain and respect. And if people come together, seeking faith and strength in difficult times, that doesn't make you feel powerless, he questioned a little more boldly. Now, that's what I fear most, he admitted, a slight trace of anxiety breaking his voice. Unions based on faith and love are like a light that dispels darkness. The more souls embrace faith and truth, the more difficult my task becomes. That's why my work is so methodical. I need to create distrust, division and discord. Separating souls is my greatest triumph. As his description unfolded, I understood that he was not just an entity of evil, but a representation of human weaknesses. Finally, you have no more questions for me? He probed his presence, darkening it even further. Yes, I responded with renewed determination. If you are the personification of wrong choices and despair, what hope do you have for those willing to fight? There is something you fear against you. He smiled, but there was a deep unease in his response. I fear humanity when it turns inward with true repentance and seeks the truth. That search can reverse what I have built, and that terrifies me. But the choice is always yours, he said, his gaze fixed on me with a hypnotic intensity. In that instant, I realized that the power he held lay not only in his actions, but in the fear and doubt he implanted in souls. I promise that those who hear your words will act with conscience and courage, I replied in a firm whisper. With that, the demon began to fade into the flames. His malicious smile slowly disappeared, but his words still echoed in me, a constant reminder of the traps we face. There was so much more to learn and understand, and as I emerged from this encounter, I realized that knowing and challenging these forces was only the beginning of a greater journey that would resonate beyond the confines of this hell. That's when everything started to spin and I saw myself again, back to life. The world slowly materialized around me, and my mind struggled to adjust to reality. I was lying in a hospital bed, surrounded by machines that beeped and emitted vital signs. The smell of disinfectant and the distant murmur of conversations filled the air after the plane crash. It seemed as if I had returned from a journey that had taken me to the depths of darkness. Over time, confusion gave way to clarity, and the vivid memories of the souls I met continued to dance in my mind. I had seen hell not just as a place but as a representation of the struggles we all face in life. The experience transformed me, and sharing what I learned flooded back. As soon as I was well enough, I decided to tell my story. I was invited to participate in television programs where I shared my near-death experience and the lessons I learned from the souls I encountered. In each interview, I spoke about the devil, his traps, and how he operates in subtle but devastating ways. But I knew it wasn't just a personal story, was a warning to the world. People were fascinated and at the same time moved. I heard accounts of how my story had resonated with their own struggles. Many began to question their choices, their faith, and the voices they often ignored within. This further motivated me to create a book. The title was a natural one, Beyond the Veil, Encounters with Lost Souls. In it, I narrate not only my experiences but also the conversations I had with those souls, especially the interview with the demon, where he revealed his tactics and strategies. I wanted people to understand that darkness is not invincible, it dissolves in the light of awareness and compassion. When the book was released, sales exceeded all my expectations, people were excited, and the community began to mobilize around the messages I shared. I held lectures and workshops in community centers and schools, addressing awareness-raising topics about the impact of choices and the importance of humility and faith in the world. Everyday struggles. A young woman who had read my book approached me with tears in her eyes after one of my talks. She told me how she had battled addiction and how the stories I shared helped her realize that her battle wasn't just physical but also spiritual. To say this moved me would be an understatement. The feeling of having made a difference in someone's life was indescribable. Other people who struggled with low self-esteem, like the influencer I met in hell, also approached me and shared how they could recognize their traps and work to overcome them. They often asked me how they could find light in the midst of darkness, and I responded every day with the same message. I learned that truth and faith are your greatest allies. Never doubt their power. With each new story, each new soul I met along my path, I felt more connected to the purpose that emerged from my experience. Hell wasn't just a state of being, it was a reflection of the choices each of us faces, and speaking out about this became a voice of warning. My mission, of course, the battle against the devil's traps continues, but now many more have the tools and courage to confront them. In every program I appeared on every page of my book, I made it clear that even in the depths of darkness, light can always be found. With the support of the people who joined me on this journey, I managed to build a community that truly seeks understanding, empathy, and transformation. Awareness is an immense power, and together, we can dispel the shadows that often surround us. My words became a beacon of hope. I pledged to continue this fight, not only for myself but for all those who are still in the shadows. Now, with every breath I take, a new chapter begins. The voices of hell echo in my mind, not as a reminder of despair, but as a testament to the human capacity for redemption, and, through love and faith, always find a way back to the light. If you have been touched by this story and wish to deepen your understanding of the challenges that surround us, I invite you to subscribe to our channel and be part of this journey of transformation. Also, for those seeking practical and enlightening guidance, I am offering the digital book, The 10 Great Sins That Lead to Hell. This book contains valuable teachings for avoiding the traps that lead us to darkness,